Welcome back. Our last video discussed virtualization in practice. In this video, I'll be showing you virtualization behind the scenes, how virtual machines are created, stored, and managed. Let's start by creating a new virtual machine. To do this, I'll start up VMware Workstation. As you can see in the VMware console, I can manage my inventory of virtual machines or guests. My favorites are listed across the top of the screen. And for a given guest, I can see its configuration settings, including the resources assigned, a description if I created one, and some additional details. There's also a Home tab that lists some of the common tasks like starting and creating virtual machines, connecting to a remote server, and checking for software updates. Let's select Create a New Virtual Machine. This launches the new virtual machine wizard. For this video, I'll choose the Custom option. The first thing I'm asked is about hardware compatibility. This affects where the machine can be run, and the resource limitations. For instance, if I select Workstation 5, I can use a maximum of 3.5 gigabytes of memory and 2 processors, versus Workstation 10 that allows me to use 64 gig and 16 processors. I'll go with Workstation 10. Next, it asks me where I'll be installing from. For this example, I'll install from an Ubuntu ISO image. Once I select the installation media, VMware tries to determine the operating system. Since it recognized Ubuntu Linux, it will help me with the installation by doing something called Easy Install. It now asks for some personalization details and a machine name and installation location. Now it wants to know how many processors and cores I'm allocating. I'll use the default of 1. Next comes the memory. It tells me max, min, and recommended settings. For this installation, I'll use the minimum of 512 megabytes. And now it wants to know how I want to set up the network for my virtual machine. I can choose to use the same network address as the host machine, to use network address translation, to use a private subnet, or not to network the machine at all. I'll choose NAT. Let's just accept the defaults for the next 3 settings. And this brings us to the disk capacity settings. We're given a recommendation for the amount of storage, which we're free to change. I'll tell VMware to assign 12 gigabytes. We're also asked if we want to allocate the space right away. Alternatively, I can wait until the space is needed before actually using it. In storage terms, this is known as thin provisioning. I can also choose whether to use a single file or multiple files. Depending on the underlying operating system, this can make a difference. Next, we're asked to name the disk file. More on this later. Finally, we're asked if we want to customize hardware. I can add things like a floppy drive, though Lord knows why I would, additional ports or network adapters, or other devices. For this VM, I'll leave things as they are, and I'll click Finish. The virtual machine is then created. I'll speed this up in the interest of time. Once the install process completes, I have a virtual machine. But what is this virtual machine really? The answer is a bunch of files. Let's have a look. Here's the directory of my virtual machine. If we open it, we see the files that make up the VM. There are a number of different types, including .vmx for system configuration, .nvram for system virtual memory, .log for log files, .vmdk for system hard drives, along with others. That's it. That's our virtual machine. Remember when it asked me what I wanted to name the VM drive and whether I wanted to break it up into multiple files? You can see it did just that. If I click on a log file, I see log messages for this virtual machine. If I open the .vmx file with a text editor, you'll see that it contains several configuration settings. So what does all this mean? Well, because VMs are really just files, I can move them around from one host machine to another. That's a whole lot easier than requiring dedicated hardware for each operating system. It also means that I can easily back up an entire operating environment, including OS and system state, rather than just application data. Just think about what that means if I ever need to restore an application to a specific point in time. In the next video, I'll take you through some interesting virtualization use cases, including some really cool things you can do with virtual machines that you just can't do with physical systems. See you then.